Welcome to Growing Concern. We only have about a half an hour for this first segment, so we're just going to jump right to it here. My guest is
Justin K.
Justin K. I do that once in a while. I just
That's
blank.
fine.
Justin K. He's with a group called No New Animal Labs, who are protesting the building of a lab in Seattle, Washington. And we'll just let him tell you a little bit about that. We got about half an hour. We're going to have a call in about 5 minutes from Seattle, and just fill you in a little bit more on this details. So, Justin, welcome to the program. I'll make a note to remember your name.
That's fine. Thanks for having me.
All right, yeah. I first heard about this on Portland Indie Media, which people still do go to Portland Indie Media occasionally, which is good. And but I don't really know a whole lot about it. So if you just let us know a little bit more what's going on up there before we get the call.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm glad to hear that the posting I made on Indie Media had some kind of impact.
All right, great.
I wasn't sure how many people are still on it or not. So the campaign No New Animal Lab is based in Seattle, Washington, but it's kind of become sort of a regional Northwest campaign, but it also has people organizing across the United States and even some presence internationally, and I can speak as to why that is. University of Washington is currently trying to build a facility called the Animal Research and Care Facility, which is a large underground...
And care?
Yeah, right. A so-called Animal Research and Care Facility is a proposed large underground vivisection lab, which would centralize and expand animal research at the university. Essentially, it would increase the number of animals that are used, tortured, and killed in labs by 30%.
30% nationwide, statewide?
In the University of Washington.
Oh, in that
area. University of Washington is a relatively prestigious, well-known research university. And so in order to garner further grant funding, they receive about $500 million a year in grants for animal research alone. And in order to maintain their status in terms of grant funding from both the NIH and from private donors and such, they need to centralize and expand animal research.
It sounds a little like OHSU.
Yeah, they actually administrate one of the National Primate Research Centers as well. Oregon National Primate Research Center is administrated by OHSU. The Washington National Primate Research Center is administrated by University of Washington. And speaking of primates, they also have about a little less than 1,000 primates right now, and in addition to hundreds of other animals, including dogs, cats, rabbits, mice, guinea pigs, and all sorts of different animals that are used in biomedical research, and they will increase those numbers by hundreds, if not thousands, if this facility is built. And so the campaign started as an effort to stop initially the voting for approval of this lab. The University of Washington Board of Regents are actually currently being sued for illegally voting to approve the lab away from public scrutiny at a private meeting, which was in violation of Washington's Open Public Meetings Act. When Amanda calls in, she can explain a little bit more about that. She's more directly involved with the lawsuit. And after they did essentially vote to approve the facility, the campaign started in an effort to stop the construction. The construction will take several years. And the construction company that was contracted by University of Washington is a company called Skanska, particularly Skanska USA, which is the United States subsidiary. But the company is actually a Swedish-based firm internationally called Skanska AB that has offices all around the world. They're one of the largest construction companies in the world, one of the largest construction corporations. They have a huge market dominance in that field. And because they have offices all over the United States, over 30 cities actually have offices for this company, we've been able to get, through our own grassroots networks of animal advocates, campaign started against the construction company to get them to cancel their contract with the University of Washington, which will then obviously have the ripple effect of creating a greater headache for the university, increase the cost of the lab, which is already past $100 million. The contract alone is $90 million to the company. And so currently the campaign is working on getting the contract, getting Skanska to withdraw from the contract with the University of Washington, and also pressuring the Board of Regents to re-vote on the lab and essentially to cancel all the plans that they have due to nothing but grassroots activist pressure, which has been gaining a lot of momentum in the last few months. The campaign is just under 6 months old, and we already have cities, over 14 cities participating in the campaign against Skanska, and also people on the ground in Portland and Washington planning on organizing around this march on University of Washington, which is happening next Saturday, April 25th. And so we're hoping to get a massive demonstration at the campus of University of Washington. We're having Lauren Gazzola, who is an ex-Shack prisoner, one of the Shack 7, Stop Huntington Animal Cruelty. She'll be speaking at the march, and we hope to have hundreds of people rally in the streets of Seattle to oppose the facility and to bring pressure on the university and the university's decision makers, and get the plans canceled.
Mm-hmm. It's a very good synopsis of it. I've got a pretty good grip on what's going on. From what I gathered from what you were saying, it's going to be a large facility.
Yeah, and I've seen the site as it's being cleared right now for construction.
So they are working on it already then?
Well, the ironic thing is prior to even the lab officially being approved by the Board of Regents of the university, the construction company had already been contracted out, and they had already begun pre-construction services, even though that it wasn't officially approved yet by the university. And so they had already been rolling with these plans, which just kind of shows that any of those votes essentially are just sham votes. That don't really mean anything at all in terms of the actually being subject to public scrutiny. And so yes, they are preparing. They're essentially preparing the site for excavation right now. So again, it's going to be entirely underground, and it should be a little under 100,000 square feet of animal, basically facility to keep just captive animals held in just 2 stories of cages, essentially, for hundreds, if not thousands, of animals. So,
any idea of what the? I think you mentioned the word vivisection, so this isn't just to test cosmetics or anything.
No. I mean, I'm not saying it's any more prestigious than testing cosmetics, but it's under the guise of biomedical research, not unlike Oregon Primate National Research Center, which you mentioned prior. So the university does all sorts of biomedical experiments, ranging from neurology to HIV/AIDS research to athletic research for things like human physiology, and they use animals for essentially everything. And so it will be a vivisection lab entirely. They already have many facilities around their campus that use animals in experiments. The issue is that they want to not only expand, but also have a large centralized facility that's kind of the epicenter of animal research on campus, which is the point of this lab. And so it's kind of a key linchpin to the whole infrastructure of vivisection for University of Washington, which is why it's important that activists actually identify it as something that needs to be essentially a pressure point for the vivisection industry at UW. It's not just any new lab, it's also going to be the most important lab on that campus if built. And so it's crucial for those who advocate for animals to be able to understand its importance to the university, and therefore understand why it's important that activists do everything they can to stop it.
Sure. And it seems to me that if they can get this built, then that's going to kind of push the envelope for this sort of thing going on in other places.
For sure. I mean, although using animal models for biomedical research has definitely been getting a little bit more of a critical eye from universities like Harvard, which are actually phasing out primate experimentation at their primate center. Universities like UW understand that it's sort of lucrative, and so although there might be skepticism among the scientific community, it's important to them to be able to maintain the grant funding that comes in. And it's important to note that a huge chunk of the money that comes in, federal money, taxpayer money that comes in for animal research, it doesn't just go to the researcher to pay for the actual experiments, the cost of the experiments. About 50% of it actually goes to the institution itself to pay for whatever overhead costs. So there's an incentive.
The general fund.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there's an incentive at the institution to institutionalize animal research. And so when we see these expansions and we hear things like, oh, for things like biomedical progress, we have to kind of roll our eyes and realize that it's really about money. It might be at a public university, but it's essentially still a private industry, the animal research industry, which is massive industry, billion-dollar industry. I mean, just look at this construction firm. It's about to make $90 million for one lab. And to think that it's not really about all of these different avenues of profit, that the expansion is really more about making the university financially sound, then we can't be sort of misguided by these discussions about human health versus animal health, et cetera. And so absolutely we see these expansions as sort of flying in the face of new alternatives and existing alternatives to using animals in research, which have always been around. And we wonder why we see this isn't the only expansion happening in the country. We know of one that's about to happen in Arizona. We know that OHSU has applied for grants from the NIH to expand their primate center. And we know that animal labs around the country are always trying to get more funding, to grow, to get more animals, because it's about money.
That's a good point there. Yeah, if you build it, we will come means
Exactly.
that I think the enforced activists they used to go to the auctions, and if you buy it, you buy us.
Exactly.
Exactly. And that's exactly what's going on here. That's why that's put up there.
Exactly.
And this is we'll get back to this now. This is the March on UW. April 25th, 2 p.m. I don't know where Red Square is, and I'm not able to make it.
Yeah.
I'm really bummed about that, too, because I'd like to go to this. But there will be hopefully a great showing, and people will be coming down probably from the north and from the east.
Yeah.
And coming up from Portland. We should mention that really quickly.
Sure.
Is there any caravans set up, or are people on their own?
Yeah, so I also work with a collective locally called Portland Animal Liberation, which participates in this campaign and has been since the beginning. That group is organizing carpools, ride shares, for Saturday leading up to the march, and also prior to that if people want to go up early. There's really a whole weekend of activities centered around the march. So Portland Animal Liberation is working on setting up carpools, possibly renting passenger vans, depending on how many people are willing to RSVP to come up from Portland. But we expect a few dozen people to come up from Portland. We are aware of people coming from as far as Texas for the march.
Wow, really?
So if anyone is interested in coming up from Portland, just email Portland Animal Liberation, info@Portland Animal Liberation, and we can coordinate carpools and have you sort of checked off as someone who's definitely willing to come.
That's Portland Animal Liberation. Are they? Do they have a website or a Facebook page or anything?
You can find the group on Facebook. Just search Portland Animal Liberation. You could just Google it, and you could find the contact info, Facebook, email addresses available on there.
And the same with your organization?
Yeah.
No
New Animal Lab. NoNewAnimalLab.com. Facebook, No New Animal Lab. Twitter, No New Animal Lab. Email, info@NoNewAnimalLab.
All right.
Yeah, pretty easy to remember.
Got the whole social scene there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Kind of have to these days. To
pretty much, it must be done. I remember a while back we've had, I think it was Matt Roselle on talking about the one of his big things was primates.
Yeah.
And there was terrible things being done to monkeys for nicotine research.
Yeah.
Is that something that's going to be going on up there that you can speak to that? Because there's some terrible things they do.
Yeah, so both...
Just some details that isn't too gruesome.
Yeah, both University of Washington and Oregon, or OHSU, Oregon National Primate Research Center, as I mentioned, they both have these national primate research centers, which are essentially projects of the NIH that different universities are sort of oversee. And they engage in what is called basic research, which is essentially not product testing, but using animals, particularly in this instance you mentioned primates, and we should mention that there are a lot of primates at University of Washington, but there are many other animals that are also used as essentially just nothing more than petri dishes to do various sorts of experiments. There absolutely are things going on like addictive research, like you mentioned, nicotine. There are those sorts of things happening at University of Washington. There are neurological experiments, so you might be open brain surgeries. There are attempts to infect primates with HIV, which you really can't infect a primate with HIV. It's specific to humans. It would be SIV, which is sort of a simian analog to HIV. And it's sort of a total mess of this sort of thing going on. It's for folks that are familiar with OHSU and the Oregon National Primate Research Center, imagine anything going on there, anything as abhorrent is happening at University of Washington in their labs. They are a little bit smaller. Their primate center is smaller than OHSU's, and that's sort of their argument for why they need to expand. There's too crammed. The conditions are actually too, they kind of admit the conditions are actually sort of abhorrent, and they're trying to make an argument that they're expanding for the sake of the animals, when in reality they're not just expanding so there's more room for the animals they already have. They're expanding because they want to increase the number of animals. This underground lab that's proposed is actually a phase 1 of a series of expansions in which they want by I want to say, I don't want to get the date wrong, but I would say in a number of years they actually want to have expanded enough to have thousands of more animals. And so it's really not about creating better conditions, it's about creating more opportunities for grant funding. And again, it all sort of ties back to that.
So if all that doesn't sound bad enough to the viewers, I'll ask him another question. Where do the animals come from?
That's a good question. A lot of that information is difficult to find.
No doubt.
We've been doing records requests from University of Washington to figure out where they're sourcing some of the animals from. Animals that are smaller are likely bred there, like mice and rats, which ironically I'll note are not listed as animals under the Animal Welfare Act. Small rodents like mice and rats are not considered animals, along with other invertebrates, which are obviously fall under the animal kingdom. And so it's hard to keep trace of where over 95% of animals used in research are small rodents, but it's very hard to keep track of them because the USDA doesn't really keep much record of those animals because they're not animals, quote unquote. And so they do keep track of animals like primates, and they keep track of larger mammals like rabbits or dogs and cats, and they can come from a number of places. There are dealers of there are dealers that are based in Oregon. Even there are rabbit breeders in Oregon and Washington that breed specifically for animals to be used in labs. And so they're likely getting animals from a number of different private breeders, which are essentially are really, the conditions are not different than, say, like a fur farm where you just have rows of cages of animals crammed into small wire cages, right?
Yeah.
Primates are generally transported via an international trade. They're sort of difficult to breed in captivity. OHSU is one of the few places that actually does have a primate breeding facility out here. University of Washington gets primates from Alice, Texas, which is a Covance breeding facility. It's sort of one of the main import centers of the primate trade in the United States. They also get I don't want to get this incorrect. This is sort of new information I just found out, but they're getting primates shipped they're wild captured in places like Southeast Asia or Africa. They are sometimes bred in captivity at facilities like OHSU. They have their own breeding colony elsewhere, the University of Washington, and in addition to primates, like I said, you can get, dogs and cats special bred for labs. You can get rabbits special bred for labs. You can get guinea pigs special bred for labs. They all have sort of specific species attributes that are useful for animal researchers, but mostly being docile was what they want. Beagles, for instance, which University of Washington uses, are used so frequently because they are pretty docile when they're being handled violently, and I'll say that they are being handled violently in labs. And so beagle breeders exist for that purpose. And I don't want to say I don't know the names of specific breeders because that information is sort of tightly kept. It is public information, but it's not something that places like University of Washington are readily giving out to people that are inquiring, because it's, then they can sort of connect the dots and trace where these animals are coming from and figure out that it's an industry. Like I said, it's not just, these like animals are quaintly being used in experiments and then they're euthanized peacefully or whatever their narrative is they choose to maintain. In reality, it's a trade that follows animals from different places across the world that end up in these different research institutions where they essentially are kept captive, tortured and then killed and then wasted and then thrown in, biohazard waste facilities.
So that euthanization, what they call care.
Their record of care is more than less than what the NIH actually requires, which is, I don't even want to call it care. The NIH requirements under the Animal Welfare Act are a joke in and of themselves. But even so, University of Washington has frequently violated USDA regulations and has been fined a number of times, has been cited for things as grotesque as having primates self-mutilate due to the conditions of captivity. And they've been cited by the USDA for things like male primates that have been exposed to infants improperly exposed to infants because the animal care technicians weren't really paying attention. And the male primates just brutally attack and kill the infants, and then the ones that didn't die during the attack are euthanized by the university. That's the kind of care that we would expect from the animal research and care facility, which is precisely why it's important that people put pressure on the university and pressure on the construction company to stop the lab.
Mm-hmm. You know, I've been debating about whether to bring this up or not, but I know that when Matt Roselle was on, he talked about how they ejaculate, because you mentioned, you know, they raise the animals and they ejaculate them through anal electrocution.
Yeah,
That's something that's still going on? Because that to me just is outrageous.
I'm not sure what they're doing at University of Washington. I don't want to.
Well, this was
guess,
OHSU.
Right? Yeah, so OHSU, and they were using electroejaculation at OHSU. For background for people that don't know, that's hooking up electrodes to the penis of a monkey to get them to stimulate ejaculation via electrical shock. And so there's actually video that Matt captured of that process taking place. It's pretty easy to find online.
Sure, yeah.
And it's terrible. And I'm not sure if that's going on at University of Washington in terms of if they're doing that for the sake of breeding. I wouldn't be surprised. It's sort of industry practice.
Right, I think I got that mixed up with the anal electrocution they use for fur farms.
Yeah.
Because it just
one is not necessarily better than the other. For fur farms, it's a method of killing
them,
right? And so that's the irony, right? Is, you know, they're using one method is to kill an animal using electrical shock. The other is to electrically shock it into ejaculating so they can collect semen and then forcefully, you know, breed them with one another so they could have a growing population to be used as tools.
To be treated the same way.
Exactly.
So your tax dollars are going into this, folks. You know, and it just drives me crazy to think that this is going on. And you know, we bring this issue up occasionally, whether you know, whether it's the OHSU and now the University of Washington, and we bring folks on to talk about the circus coming to town, or we'll talk a little bit later after Justin has to move along at the half hour about Packy and the elephants up there. And no animals should be in captivity, but to me, it's just it's insult to injury that they're going to use the word care in the name of their facility. Well, I just can't believe they have the balls to do that.
Well, I mean, if they were honest about what it is, and I think maybe the public would be a little bit a little bit more critical when they hear that they're trying to push through a $123 million project, you know. But under the guise of animal care, people are going to be less critical, and obviously that's sort of what we're trying to expose, is that it has nothing to do with animal care. It has really nothing to do with biomedical progress. Their entire narrative is sort of blanketed in this idea that it's animals that they care for deeply, animals that they don't want to hurt, and they take the best care that they can for them because they're being used to help humans. These animals are necessary sacrifices for biomedical progress. And for anyone that pays attention to things like the pharmaceutical industry or the state of health in the country in general, we realize that the way that we funnel money into things like animal research to get results, to publish papers, to pay vivisectors, animal researchers, and the institution's leadership, like the president, the provost, and people that are in charge of the administration for animal research institutions who have $1 million salaries or have hundred thousands of dollar salaries and then get paid these extra grants, which themselves can be in millions a year. That has really nothing to do about caring about other people even. And so we don't want people to walk away thinking that we're choosing animals over humans. It's sort of a false dichotomy that's been used as a wedge between those who want to see earnest biomedical progress for legitimate reasons and those who advocate for animals. In reality, it's the same issue at hand. These are fooling us, right? I mean, these are institutions, these are industries, these are private corporations and public universities that have sort of fooled us into this idea that this is sort of a necessary thing for human health. In reality, it's you know, what could that money have done differently if it were being spent on taking care of those who are disproportionately affected by things like institutional poverty, institutional racism, which have major impacts on the health of populations. And instead, that money is being funneled into the pockets of people at leadership at research institutions, CEOs of corporations, executives, and the vivisectors themselves, who are, for anyone who's stood outside their homes and protested them, as I have and many other people have, which we'll see some video of home protests later on. But you know, we can see that these are nothing short of people that are loaded with money, and it's really about money
and want more.
Exactly.
You know, and it strikes me too that within the industry, within that bubble that they all live, they probably are heroes, and a lot of them probably believe their own propaganda.
For sure.
Not that that excuses it, but I mean, you know, that is what the situation is. They have this little bubble they live in, and they really think they're doing the right thing.
Again, it's an institution that sort of, I mean, med students are brought up in this climate where they believe that this is, initially they probably really do, I wouldn't be surprised if they wanted to help people, you know, and I don't doubt that a lot of people get into it thinking that this is how they do productive, cutting edge research or something, or whatever they might tell themselves. But the point being is that it's the institution that kind of grinds them into this position where they're basically humans exploiting animals for the illusion of progress, and in no way.
We got a phone call here.
All right. Well,
that's it. I like to follow that.
I won't rant too much.
Oh, that was a good line of thought, though. So I think we have a phone call. Caller, you're on the air. We haven't had calls in a while, so it might be a little bit bumpy. This might be Amanda, hopefully.
Yes, it is.
Could be. Okay.
All right, I think I hear something. You can turn it up a little bit.
Hello? Hello?
Whoop, there we go. I think we got you. Can you hear us, Amanda?
I can hear you, yeah.
Oh, hey, we hear you great. So I'm here with Justin, and we've been discussing the animal lab they're trying to put in. The Animal Laboratory and Care Facility, I think it was called. And so...
Animal Research and Care Facility.
Right, and so well, we've been discussing it at length, and he mentioned that you might have some of your own things to bring to the discussion, but he mentioned something about a lawsuit, and that you would know a little bit more about that.
Yes.
So I was kind of interested in hearing about that.
Okay, did you guys talk at all about it already, or should I?
Not really.
Not in any detail.
Okay, so this campaign started with a lawsuit against the University of Washington Board of Regents back when they were voting to approve the construction of the lab. They did that at one of their regular meetings, and I was there along with other people protesting the lab. And instead of discussing it at the meeting, as you would expect when it's a very controversial thing that you would hope that a lot of discussion and thought is going into, they passed the vote for the lab, hidden in a list of consent agenda items, didn't even discuss it, and I thought that was weird. So I did a public records request and got thousands of pages of emails between the Board of Regent members as well as the third parties, and through that saw that the regents the night before the meeting had a private dinner meeting, which is a violation of Washington's Open Public Meetings Act for the regents. And at that meeting, the only item on their agenda was to talk about the Animal Research and Care Facility, and through further public records requests, we've seen more about the UW, the current UW interim president, Anamari Kause, and Vice Provost Paul Jenny used that meeting to heavily pressure the regents and to get them to decide to vote unanimously to approve the lab. And so we have a now ongoing lawsuit against the regents for that secret meeting, and coming up on the 24th, the day before our upcoming March, there's a hearing in that lawsuit. So we are hopeful that that's going to go well.
All right. Well, it seems to me that they're going to, from what Justin's saying, they're already doing construction on this. I would think that they might be beginning construction in order to waylay any way of stopping it, because they'll just say that this is already under construction. We're not going to waste all this money. Is there any way a lawsuit could get around that response?
There actually is. So they, about a year later after that, after the lawsuit was in place and everything, they tried to, maybe it wasn't a year later, a month later, they staged a revote for the public and acted like, they were doing that to make sure that, they dotted all their I's, crossed all their T's.
Right. I'm familiar with that.
That vote, we are, in our lawsuit arguing that that vote doesn't fix what happened, that vote was it's not like stuff halted between those two votes. They were continuing with their plans for construction as they had intended. So there was no reconsideration, no like really going through that process again in an open public way. So we're hoping that through the lawsuit that vote itself will be challenged, and that in addition to the Regents being told they violated the Open Public Meetings Act, they will also be told that their vote is void because it was never sincerely made.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of a rubber stamping, sounds like to me. We're familiar with that down here in Portland with the city council. Well, so are there any questions you want to ask to have her bring out any specific thing, Justin?
No, I mean, we covered a decent amount already. If you had anything you wanted to pick her brain about before I have to take off.
Right. Well, Justin has to be leaving in a few minutes. So is there anything you particularly want to bring to the folks down here in Portland to encourage them to come up to the rally?
Please come up. I know that all of the Seattle area activists are really excited that this has become a regional and also national campaign, and excited that people are coming from other cities. So in addition to this being a powerful point in the campaign to show that there is national opposition to this lab, it will also be very powerful for the activists here to feel the strength of activists from everywhere for something that's happening here in our city, and it will just be an amazing boost and inspiration in this campaign to have people from all over, especially from Portland, where Seattle and Portland activists should be working together to all come together on this day.
Mm-hmm. Well, I appreciate you calling in. Are you yourself involved with the outreach to other cities?
Yes, I am.
I'm kind of curious. What are you hearing from these other folks?
People are excited. There have been activists involved in this campaign protesting Skanska, as I'm guessing you and Justin have talked about already, in cities all over, and all the way in Florida, New York, and people seem really excited to be connected to a powerful grassroots campaign and know that when they're out doing a protest in their city, that people are doing the same thing on the other side of the country, and that even though we might have that geographic separation, that we're all in this together and coming together to show strong opposition to the UW and Skanska.
All right. Well, Justin has to leave here in a minute or so, so I really appreciate you calling in, Amanda, and bringing your voice to this.
Well, thank you for having us.
All right. I wish you folks all the best of, I won't call it luck, because you folks have really been putting some hard work into this, and there should be a good showing of folks in Portland, and from what Justin was saying, Texas even, right?
Texas, California.
That's great. That's great. All right. Thank you very much, Amanda.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
So you say you have to split?
I do. I actually have to go take care of one of my cats. That's what that alarm
Take really
was,
good care of it.
But if you want to show that video,
Right,
I would say a couple things about it.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you to set the video up, and then you can...
Okay. So when I take off, I'll be showing a video of... And back in February, we had a week of action, a national week of action organized against the construction firm Skanska, which we mentioned a few times. So the video will be it was a promotional tool that we used. It had footage from different protests, and this is a bit of an aggressive campaign. We're organizing with no money, so we have to kind of compensate for the fact that we don't have all the funds that a lot of the big national animal rights groups have, that we have to sort of use what we do have at our disposal, which is pressure. Activists can mobilize themselves to really build momentum, to use lots of pressure and pressure tactics to oppose a corporation that has $1 billion revenue like Skanska. So we've been having people protest at their offices, doing office invasions and disruptions. People have done home demonstrations outside of key executives for the company. And so this video, which dates back to winter, is going to have a collection of footage like that. It's the same sort of stuff that we're continuing doing now. And if people wanted to participate in this kind of stuff in Portland, there's actually a key official that lives in the Portland area who signed the contract with the University of Washington. His name is David Schmidt. I'll say his name on air.
All right.
His name is David Schmidt. He's the Chief Operating Officer of Skanska USA. He signed the contract that really signed the lives of thousands of animals away. It is his name that sort of authorized the project as it is now. And so if you want to participate in these kind of pressure tactics, we encourage people to get involved with No New Animal Lab and Portland Animal Liberation, and you can watch the video to see what kind of stuff we're using. Ignore the dates, February.
Right.
Ignore those dates, but do pay attention to April 25th, next Saturday, and get in touch if you want to come.
All right, and I'll kind of sum it all back up after it ends. All right.
Thank you.
Well, thanks a lot.
Thanks very much.
All right, so we'll get to that video.
to take that contract. We will never back down till you stop the killing. We will never back down till you stop the killing. Don't forget, baby, everybody love you if you're watching this. We're here to play a contract. If you want some decent rest,
Cut your ties with animal tests.
Skanska USA has blood on its hands. If you want some peace and rest, cut your ties with animal tests. If you want some peace and rest, cut your ties with animal tests. Passionate activists will continue to come to your offices all around the world.
All your cruelty and your lies, we will never compromise.